All right, we are thrilled to have with us three representatives from the International Joint Commission Great Lakes Water Quality Board, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, the IJC is a very well-established and old organization going back to the Boundary Waters Treaty of 1909, relationship between Canada and the United States. And the Water Quality Board was set up in 1972 under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. Our main presenter today is Dr. Kelsey Leonard. She's a water scientist, legal scholar, policy expert, writer, and citizen of the Shinnecock Nation. She's a professor at the University of Waterloo, and she is currently serving as a member of the Great Lakes Water Quality Board. And serving as backup and support for Dr. Leonard, we have Antoinette Arvai, who's a physical scientist and serves as staff support for the Water Quality Board. And we have Allison Vogleslong Zainati, public affairs specialist at the Great Lakes Regional Office. So thank you so much, all three of you, for coming to share with us today. And we'll turn it over to you to tell us about the 2024 regional poll.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to present some of our key findings from the International Joint Commission Great Lakes Water Quality Board's 2024 Great Lakes Regional Poll. Really excited to be here with you all. As was mentioned in the introduction, I am Dr. Kelsey Leonard. I am a professor at the University of Waterloo, focusing on water governance, particularly in the Northeast region of this continent and largely the Great Lakes. So it's really fortunate for me to be here with you all. As I mentioned, being based out of the Waterloo area, I am zooming in from the traditional territories of the neutral Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg. And so really excited to be able to continue that legacy of stewardship and conservation that we continue to see from First Nations and tribal nations across the Great Lakes region in some of the work that we are going to share with you today as a water quality board. So I'm furthermore pleased to be presenting to the Great Lakes Islands Alliance members, many of you that are joining today are members of. And today we're going to go through a bit of an overview of the poll results. My presentation will first give you a brief introduction to the International Joint Commission and what we do as a Great Lakes Water Quality Board. And then I'll highlight some of the value of public opinion polling and the methods and some of the key demographics that come into play with the Great Lakes Regional Poll. I will then go through a selection of poll results. There are too many poll questions to review them all with you today, but we have provided a selection through consultation with the Great Lakes Islands Alliance that I hope will highlight some of the pressing questions that would be of relevance to you. And we hope that this conversation can be as extensive as we're able to have in the time allotted to us today. Throughout the presentation, for some of the results, I'll highlight comparisons of responses from individuals who identified as living full-time or part-time on a Great Lakes island, who I'll refer to as islanders. There will also be some other comparisons of different crosstab results throughout our conversation today. Additionally, following my slides, myself and our wonderful IJC staff members, Antoinette and Allison, can answer your questions during the Q&A period at the end. So if you have a question that comes up, bubbling to mind, feel free to write it down, jot it down, share it in the chat, and then we'll be sure to come back to it during the Q&A period. All the reports and materials for the poll, including a media kit with graphics and animations. Guys, the animations are super cool. I've seen some of them, as well as some of the, a variety of different results as shared through those graphics and animations are available on the webpage shown on the slide here. And I'm sure we can also link that in the chat for folks to be able to access after today. So with that, let's dive in. The IJC is an independent organization created through the 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty by Canada and the United States. It is an impartial, science-based advisor that helps the two countries prevent and resolve disputes over waterways spanning the international border, including the Great Lakes. So, the IJC has responsibilities under the Canada-US Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. The agreement provides a framework for the two governments to cooperatively restore, protect, and enhance the water quality of the Great Lakes. The objectives of the agreement are to make the Great Lakes water swimmable, fishable, and drinkable for all. Swim, fish, drink. Through the agreement, the IJC assists Canadian and U.S. governments to help restore, protect, and enhance the Great Lakes, as well as the upper St. Lawrence River into the international boundary. The IJC's role is to provide advice to the governments to engage with the public and to assess whether governments' actions are effectively meeting the objectives for fishable, swimmable, drinkable Great Lakes. So, with that, you may be asking yourself, well, what is this agreement? The agreement also created two IJC expert advisory boards, the Water Quality Board. That's what brings me here to you all today. And the Water Quality Board is the principal advisor to the IJC on matters of policy. The agreement also created the Science Advisory Board, which provides research and science advice. The Water Quality Board, or WQB as we sometimes like to refer to it, provides the IJC with recommendations on ways that the federal governments and other governmental institutions can solve Great Lakes issues. We also suggest ways that our recommendations could or should get implemented. So, next up, I want to talk about the value of polling. We're here to talk about a public opinion poll. So, a good starting point for today's conversation to explain what is the value of public opinion polling and why are public opinion polls useful. Well, first, when the public articulates its views, such as through opinion polling, decision makers can then make informed choices, considering the priorities and the desired directions of the communities whom they serve. Right? We want the world that we live in and the decision makers who exist in the world we live in to be informed by their constituents. Well, how do we gain that information? We do public opinion polling. So, the Water Quality Board conducts public opinion polls to provide these decision makers with an understanding of the Great Lakes region's residents' attitudes and beliefs. There are no wrong answers to an opinion poll. They reflect a snapshot of personal views that may be rooted in emotion or identity, and our polling efforts offer credible insights into areas where public views may or may not be well informed about the science behind the issues. Now, again, remember this poll in particular, it was done and conducted through 2023 and 2024, so the results are from 2024. So you won't see a snapshot of anything from 2025. So keep that in mind as you're reviewing the results we share with you today. Our first poll was conducted in 2015, and we complete them every 3 years. So we now have four sets of results spanning over 10 years, which is pretty awesome and something we're really proud of. We kept a number of questions the same over the years, so our poll provides a unique value in offering insights on long-term trends. That's something in public opinion polling that is often rare, is sort of longitudinal trends or data. Our polls are valuable as a basis for comparison across these different snapshots in time, whether comparing results over time or between our phone polls and our online polls, or between demographic groups or with other polls. So today, we're going to share with you some information that is specific to the respondents who identified as islanders, and that may be something that you can compare across polls or with other public opinion polls out there in the world. So, when we think about how do we communicate poll results to a wide range of audiences, including scientists and decision makers, it can become very valuable. So that is why we developed a media toolkit that includes a variety of graphics and animations that highlight many of the poll results by topic. So again, we probably won't get to cover everything today, so we encourage you to go to our website and be able to explore that media toolkit and some of these other resources at your leisure. So let's get back to the poll methods and some of the backstory behind this work. Our first poll, as I mentioned, was conducted in 2015, and it established a baseline data set of public opinions on Great Lakes issues. Our contractor, Oracle Poll, set quotas for each state and province and based on available information about the population of residents who live within the Great Lakes Basin. They used then a random system to place calls to cell and land phone lines. Landline phones, there we go. In 2018, the Water Quality Board repeated our 2015 poll with the same random phone call methods and population-based quotas to improve the poll's equity in representation. We set out an additional quota for 300 responses from individuals that self-identify as First Nations, Métis, or Tribal Nation members. The quota allows us to meaningfully compare the opinions of Indigenous individuals to the broader population. Then in 2021, we increased the quota for Indigenous responses to 500 and added a quota for 100 responses from full-time or part-time island residents. So new in 2021, we posted an online poll to the board's website, our water quality board, that was open to any responses. However, this method does not provide a random sample, so important to take note of that. And people taking the online poll are self-selecting, which can introduce some bias into the results. So then where did we go next? Well, we always want to grow bigger and better. So for 2024, we kept the same sample method and frame the same as 2021, but once again, we also had an online version of the poll on the board's website to collect additional responses. The online results, again, are anecdotal and provide a point of comparison, but they are not generalizable to the population within the Great Lakes region. That is why in the following slides, we focused mostly on the phone poll results, both for the 2024 results and when comparing to past results. So if you want to look at some of those online results from the online poll, that's where you'd go back to the website and take time at your leisure to look through some of those additional anecdotal responses. But finally, these polls are just that. They're polls. They indicate what people think, and they indicate what people think at that particular snapshot in time when they were living that experience. These are results, not analysis. So we do not have information that would be gathered by, for example, a focus group, where we might get insights into why people hold these beliefs. So unfortunately, we don't have the why. We're just presenting to you what those beliefs or values or opinions were as shared in the phone poll data collection. So when we think about this, we want to examine, consistent with the sample frame based on the population, 30% of the respondents are from Canada and 70% are from the US. When asking which Great Lake or water body do you live closest to, the distribution of respondents by Great Lake Basin they live in is highest in Lake Erie, followed by Lake Michigan and Lake Ontario, with lower percentages in Lake Superior and Lake Huron. So for our first question, 82% of respondents lived in the Great Lakes Basin more than 20 years. Overall, 82% of the total 2024 phone poll respondents lived in the Great Lakes Basin for more than 20 years. Comparing the responses of Islanders in blue to everyone else, the mainlanders, we might call them in gray, you can see that Islanders are slightly more likely to be newer to the region. Interesting fact. Poll respondents can also volunteer other demographic information, including their gender, income, political leaning, educational level, age, race, ethnicity. So the key takeaway from our poll about these demographics is that for the vast majority of the questions, there are not statistically significant differences in responses across these demographics. While some of our comparisons will show some modest differences, they are by and large not statistically meaningful based on the bivariate analysis conducted by the polling contractor. What we take away from that lack of difference is how truly unifying support for the Great Lakes across all walks of life and beliefs are. That's helpful to keep in mind as we highlight differences in results throughout the remainder of our presentation. So, the headline of our poll is that Great Lakes protection has value. There is increasing unanimity. About 94% are in agreement for the need to protect Great Lakes water quality, which has increased 9% since we first started asking this question in 2015. 100% of islanders said it is important to protect Great Lakes water quality in both the 2021 and 2024 polls. Remember, we didn't poll islanders before 2021, so you're keeping it consistent. Um, Additionally, 96% of islanders and 95% of mainlanders also said it is important that the Great Lakes are available for recreation. Individuals could list a number of ways they engage with the Great Lakes, with the majority walking or hiking, followed by swimming, and just under half spending time with others or kayaking. Now, referencing swimming is important because remember our intention at the IJC and the Water Quality Board through the Great Lakes Agreement: drinkable, fishable, swimmable. So it's really interesting to still see that swimming characteristic come out in the opinions of polls respondents. More than 8 in 10 respondents agreed that the Great Lakes water quality should be protected for the benefit of fish and wildlife. Fishable. This sentiment has increased 9% since we first asked in 2015. Next, we see that this sentiment is even higher among islanders, with 11% more islanders than mainlanders in agreement. While 85% overall said it is important to protect Great Lakes water quality for fish and wildlife, 78% overall said it is important to protect the Great Lakes for the benefit of people living in the basin. This view has increased 10% since 2015. Now, here we see that 17% fewer islanders than mainlanders agreed with this statement in 2021, and 15% fewer agreed in the 2024 poll. Our poll findings also show that healthy Great Lakes are viewed as essential to quality of life and the economy. So, new to the 2024 poll, we asked if interaction with nature and water in the Great Lakes provides benefits for happiness, life satisfaction, mental health, and overall well being. Overall, responses were consistently high. Interestingly, Islander responses are marginally lower, with 5% fewer saying interaction with nature provides benefits for happiness and mental health. Next up, another question in the 2024 asked about government investments in the Great Lakes. We saw that 96% of poll respondents overall and 98% of islanders said it is important for governments to invest in protecting the Great Lakes. The circles at the bottom also show this question breakdown by political identity, which shows high level of support across a wide array of ideologies. Next, a large portion of respondents recognize the economic implications of Great Lakes water quality protection. 80% agree the region's economy will suffer if the Great Lakes are not healthy, up 4% from when we first asked this question in 2015. So, comparing Canadian to US responses, there are not meaningful differences in views, and there are no meaningful differences across political views. But comparing Islander to mainlander responses, there are notable differences. In 2021, Islander residents were 18% less likely than mainlanders to agree with this sentiment, and in 2024, were 19% less likely to agree. Since our 2018 poll, we've asked people whether greater protection of the Great Lakes through regulations and their enforcement have a positive impact, a negative impact, or no impact on jobs and the economy. Generally speaking, sentiments are evenly split, and have remained so over time, with a 6% increase since 2018 in respondents that said positive impact. In 2021, islanders were 15% more likely than mainlanders to say regulations would have positive impact at 36%. This grew to 41% in 2024. Again, more than 12% greater than mainlanders to see positive impacts of regulation. So next, I want to highlight responses to questions about the key issues and challenges facing the Great Lakes. In a question new to the 2024 poll, we asked if respondents think global climate change will increase pressure put on Great Lakes. Overall, 90% of respondents agreed, and 96% of islanders agreed. We also specifically asked about concern for climate change impacts. The highest level of concern at 83% was for water quality, followed by community well-being, and then water quantity. We ask an open-ended question where respondents can identify what they think is the most significant problem or challenge with the lake they live closest to. And overall, invasive species are the top concern. But if we combine similar categories like industrial pollution and waste being dumped into the lakes, etc., then this sort of general pollution category is the top concern at 24%. So compared to overall responses, islanders are much more concerned than overall poll respondents about water levels, about more than 10%, runoff and sewage, an increase of 6%, and plastics, an increase of 7%, but less concerned with invasive species, less than 9%. So we also ask respondents to evaluate the impact they think each of the listed issues has on Great Lakes health. Consistent with open-ended response, top concerns included invasive species and runoff and sewage. But when prompted like this, a large proportion of respondents think issues including algal blooms, nutrients, and plastics have negative impacts. Around 3/4 said climate change has a negative impact. So for the 2021 and 2024 polls, we asked a number of questions specifically about drinking water perceptions. When we ask, where does your drinking water come from? A third say the Great Lakes, while 20% say groundwater or a well. Another 20% say a local lake or river. Less than 10% say they use bottled water or a water company or don't know, and 2% say they get municipal water. It's helpful to keep in mind the variety of water sources for treated drinking water when considering the responses to the following questions. We have not done any analysis of the data to identify if there are trends in these responses based on where respondents get their water. So next up, when it comes to the perception of access to clean, safe drinking water, sentiments overall increased 8% since 2021. Islanders were less likely to agree than mainlanders by about 14% less in 2024. Significantly, only 35% of respondents who identified as affiliated with First Nations, Métis, or tribes agreed with this statement. This pattern is similar with perceptions about whether all members of an individual's community have affordable, equitable access to drinking water. Islanders are half as likely than mainlanders to agree. This is similar to only 30% of Indigenous respondents that agree. Some shared commonality there. The area of least agreement overall was with the statement that respondents' community effectively manages and treats wastewater or sewage, with only half of respondents overall agreeing. Only 23% of islanders agreed, which is less than the 28% of Indigenous respondents. In a question new to the 2024 poll, we asked if respondents trust the source of their water. Nearly 60% overall agree, but only 48% of islanders agree. And only 34% of Indigenous respondents agreed with this statement. So trust is a big thing. In another question new to the 2024 poll, we asked respondents how much more they would be willing to pay on their monthly water bill to improve water quality to a level that is very safe for 3 categories. This graph simplifies responses a bit. Any response above $10 is lumped together in the yes category. The table below shows the spread of responses across the actual dollar values from $10 to more than $20. Interestingly, more than half of respondents would pay more for very safe drinking water, and double the respondents would pay $20 or more for very safe drinking water, compared to for very safe fishing or swimming, for instance. We also asked respondents for their views about the status and trend of the health of the Great Lakes overall, and about the lake they live closest to. Views on the health of the Great Lakes are overall evenly mixed, with overall responses split in thirds. Islanders were actually far more likely to rate the lakes as quote unquote good and less likely to say that they were quote unquote poor. In the next slides, we have graphics that combine and summarize the findings of several questions, split out by each of the 5 Great Lakes. In the interest of time, I won't be reviewing all of the data points, but I will just give the sort of big picture takeaways. So, sentiments were overall positive for Lake Superior. Its water quality is good and the trend is steady or improving. And overwhelmingly, views are that it's safe to drink water and fish from and swim in. Sentiments are similarly positive for Lake Huron, with views that water quality is good, staying the same, and that it's safe for swimming, drinking, and fishing activities. Next up, there was no real clear trend in Lake Michigan, with views very mixed about whether its water quality status is good, fair, or poor. And generally, views are that Lake Michigan is staying the same or getting worse. Similarly, views were mixed about fishing from and drinking water from the lake. More than half said it is safe to swim in Lake Michigan, so that might be good. And then next up, trends of the views on Lake Erie were consistently more negative. Views are that water quality is poor and staying the same or getting worse, and more than 40% said it is not safe to swim in, drink, or fish from Lake Erie. Again, remember, these are public opinions and perceptions. But next up, we see that, like Lake Michigan, views on Lake Ontario's health are also very mixed, with no clear consensus on whether its status is good, fair, or poor, and views that the lake is either staying the same or getting worse. Similarly, views on the safety of swimming, drinking, and fishing from Lake Ontario were mixed. Next, we asked a few questions only of the respondents who self-identified as affiliated with First Nations, tribal nations, or Métis. More than half of Métis and U.S. tribal nations respondents, and only a quarter of First Nations respondents, said there are ways they engage with the Great Lakes that are threatened, or they are no longer able to participate in because of poor water quality. A larger proportion, including 3 out of 4 Métis respondents, said threats facing Great Lakes health make them concerned about fish, plant, or wildlife species of cultural importance. We also asked questions about the role people see for governments and themselves in Great Lakes protection. We changed the wording and response options slightly in the question, so we can't directly compare to past year's data, but in general, in the past, top response here was everyone. And now we're seeing greater responses identifying that state, provincial, and to a lesser extent, local government should be responsible for Great Lakes protection. We also asked several questions about views on the role local governments should have in protecting the Great Lakes. One asked whether the respondent's municipality takes their responsibility of the Great Lakes protection seriously. Canadian and US responses had some minor differences, and generally responses of islanders were along the same lines as overall responses, with 4 in 10 agreeing. Next, 84% said the role of the individual in protecting the Great Lakes is important. This has increased 6% since 2015. Next, islanders are only slightly more inclined than mainlanders to say the role of the individual is important. We also asked individuals a list of actions they would be likely to take to protect the Great Lakes water quality. This graphic provides a few examples, and the full report has the entire list. But this is pretty cool. Only 5% of islanders said they would likely attend a meeting, 16% less than overall responses. Yet they were 30% more likely to contact an official and 41% more likely to conduct water sampling activities. I think we've got some really interested citizen scientists out there from the water sampling effort. Next, in a new question to the poll, we asked if respondents were hopeful for the future. A third of islanders said they were neither hopeful nor lacking hope, 13% more than mainlanders. Maybe today's presentation will help with the hope a bit. But finally, in a new question, we asked respondents to think ahead 20 years to the 2040s. Gosh, that feels like a lifetime away, but also not so far. And envision what the Great Lakes region may look like. We asked about a list of categories. Some of the responses are shown in this graphic here. Islanders appear to be similar in optimism about the future Great Lakes being protected by government, sustainable, and prosperous. Islanders are less pessimistic compared to the overall responses in terms of seeing the future lakes as more polluted and the region in conflict over water. Next, the board's aspiration is for our poll results to be useful in supporting efforts toward our shared goal to fix Great Lakes problems. We've got some wicked problems. The board also intends to use our poll results to further inform and enhance our current and future projects that advise the International Joint Commission in its responsibilities to assess progress toward the goals and objectives of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. The board, as decision maker type advisors, we need to be connected to everyday citizens of the Great Lakes. And the poll is a really wonderful opportunity for us to be informed by those everyday citizens' opinions and perceptions, to be making decisions that are driven by that voice. So the 2024 poll data sets are available by request, and academics and other organizations, maybe entities that you're members of, are encouraged to explore the results of the 2024 online and phone polls to advance the collective understanding of public opinions and attitudes about the Great Lakes. At the end of the day, it takes all of us being informed, knowledgeable, and committed to understanding our variety of perceptions and beliefs about the Great Lakes. Keeping on our 3-year cycle, the next poll will be conducted in 2027. So make sure you have your phones ready. And if you get a pollster call, please contribute, because now you'll know what it's all about. If you have any additional requests or follow-up, you can contact our Great Lakes Regional Office project lead, Antoinette, who's on today's webinar with us, at the email listed here. We also encourage you to stay updated with other activities of the IJC and the Great Lakes Water Quality Board through the IJC's social media and quarterly newsletter. Lastly, I just want to say, Tabutni, thank you for your time. I know we covered a lot, so I look forward to the Q&A with the time we have left together. And also we have other IJC staff members, Antoinette and Allison, who, if I can't answer your question, I'm sure would be happy to assist in any way that we can. So with that, I will toss it back to the organizers.
Well, thank you, Dr. Leonard. That was so much information. I'm just trying to process all of it. And I have to say, every time you mentioned swimming, my heart skipped a beat, because I am just so ready to get back in the lake. Swimming is such a huge part of the culture on the islands, and I really miss that. So can't wait. We are going to open the floor now to Q&A. I know that there are a couple questions in the chat already. Just a point of order. since we don't have a ton of time, we want to make sure that we keep all of our questions focused on the poll. I know that your minds are probably swimming in ideas right now, and I know there's a lot going on in the world, but we do want to keep the long-winded political questions that could result in more than 15 minutes of discussion to a minimum. So if you have questions about the poll itself and the results and the analysis and all that good stuff, please put them in the chat or raise your hand and we will call on you. We've got one already from Bob Anderson. How was the regional sampling quantity determined, i.e. the linear shoreline population, since Pennsylvania and Indiana have populations but very little shoreline? Like, what is the relationship there and how is that determined?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And Antoinette, feel free to jump in with more specifics for Oracle Pool and our contractor. But it's generally determined based on population for the state. And yeah, there we go. We can go back to one of those slides that might sort of have that sampling representation model there. What we did note, though, from general state population sample sizes is that we were still missing certain demographics. So, when we first did the poll in 2015, based on those state population or provincial population, state and provincial, we have to know that we go across the region. Based on those jurisdictional population demographics, we did see coming out of 2015. I guess one way of showing it is we weren't collecting demographic data. So we didn't know whose voices were missing. We didn't know if we were missing Islander voices because we didn't ask anyone, do you identify as an Islander? And so after that, we in the 2018 poll, we started to ask more of those demographics. We also started to say, okay, well, we know that there are some populations because of lack of access to internet or to, phone lines, perhaps, that maybe we might be missing as well. When you do some of these phone sampling in developing the process, it can if you don't have the right zip codes and things, you can miss people. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't missing folks. And so that's where we started to have some quotas put in place, quotas for Islanders, quotas for Indigenous populations. We've got some ideas about maybe future quotas. So you can reach out to Antoinette and to other staff if there's something you see in the poll for 2024 that you'd love to see further revised or refined for 2027. We're in that process right now of looking to that 2027 poll, and we would love to hear from you of like, I'd love to know about this population. Are they in your poll? I couldn't find it. So I hope that helped to answer your question. And of course, Antoinette or Allison, if I misspoke or you want to add additional clarity to what I shared, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah,
Great.
good work. I know that it's based on available census information. If you're interested, we can send some research. It's not on the 2024, it's on the 2021 poll results that a graduate student did that provided some geospatial analysis of responses. And so that might give some insights into zip code distribution of responses overall.
Yeah, great. That was such a cool report that's we had a graduate student do that. So definitely would encourage folks to reach out for access to that.
All right, we've got another one on the chat, I think related to more the broad mandate. Do you share, or as part of your mandate, to share funding opportunities for local lake assessment studies, like to fund other studies outside of what you do on your own?
Oh, that might be an Antoinette question. I don't believe so. We have a strict mandate and it has to align with the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. So we don't provide funding, but Antoinette, is there?
No, that's right. You're correct, Kelsey.
Okay. Just getting you a good staff confirmation.
That makes sense.
That may be
All
in
right.
comparison to the Great Lakes Commission, which is a commission involving the states and provinces. Sometimes folks confuse the IJC with our Great Lakes work with the Great Lakes Commission because they do distribute Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding and that sort of thing. So that's not our bailiwick, but the Great Lakes Commission may be a source of interest or information for funding.
Awesome. Question about how you located islanders. What was the criteria to find them? Is it property ownership? Is it just zip code? Like, how did that work?
Yes, to my knowledge, and we can probably provide additional, if you want to email us, we can get you more specifics to that from the contractor. But to my knowledge, it is based on a phone number that is affiliated to a zip code that is located on an island within the context of the Great Lakes watershed basin. So with that, there could be some folks that might have a phone number that's tied to a zip code that we know that there are some folks that may be full-time residents or part-time residents. So that's something that we're gonna sort of be further exploring. But Antoinette, I see you came off mute. Do you have additional thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, in addition to sort of the geo-targeting, they also have the screening question to ask if you are indeed a full-time or part-time island resident. So
Yeah, and that's how, in addition to the random sampling and the proportional sampling and the quota, to meet those quotas, you have to answer screening questions. And so if we think someone's an islander based on the phone sample drawing them into the geo-referencing, but then when they answer the screening questions, they say, oh, I don't live on an island, then we would keep sampling until we hit that quota to make sure that the screening questions are answered. That's probably I hope that helped, because I think that adds clarity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Matt had a question about the media toolkit. Do you have graphics and images that are specific to Islanders, kind of like what you had in this slide deck, that show like the Islander breakout? Just because I know a lot of us probably would like to share this with our folks on our islands.
Our media toolkit only has the US-Canada comparison for a couple, or over time comparison for a couple. So we don't have a variety of graphics for the different demographics, including islanders. But we can get you the slide deck.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of those slides would be great just to share, on social media. All right, Mike has a question, I think, related to algae, fertilizer, that kind of thing in the Great Lakes. Trying to break this down. Combining data from all lakes hides much of the Lake Erie problem. Is that something that you would be able to analyze in the future, or I guess approach it differently from the analytical side? Mike, did I get that right?
I think, yeah, so that's a really excellent question. So again, it's a little bit of yes and no. So the poll as constructed, I actually think gets to your question, Mike. However, what we presented to you are just the base results and findings. We haven't presented to you analysis. So you could take the actually 2015 all the way through 2024, and you, or an organization or an entity, like we said, could take that raw data and run that analysis of your question that you have there to determine and just pull out the Lake Erie responses. We haven't done that, or just pull out the respondents who are from the Lake Erie region. We haven't done that because, as we mentioned, we focus more on gaining all the data and results, and we then make that publicly available to those that request it. So hopefully we can start to build out more of that analysis and that scientific analytics moving forward. But it's an area for continued growth as this project moves forward. Allison?
There are in the report, there are a couple of questions where the contractor has provided the breakout by lake. So not for every question, but for some big picture questions like, what do you think is the top issue? We do have a table that shows here are, right? So you saw that table, the top issues were, there are like 20, right? People listed a whole variety of them. So in the report, there's a table that says by lake, here's the top 6, I think, issues for the folks who identified as living in or near the Lake Erie Basin. And off the top of my head, I know that the algal blooms was tied as the top issue in Lake Erie. along with invasive species, which was similarly high across the lakes. So there's here and there, the contractor provided us with a couple insights into by lake, in terms of the specific questions about issues, or you saw in the graphics also ask about swimmable, drinkable, fishable, right? Those were broken out by lake there, but it's not, as Kelsey said, not for every single question, but it's possible to do that with the data. We just have not done that analysis for all the poll questions.
And I think if you folks on the line or your broader networks, if you email us and with these questions or things you'd like to see, our team, being the IJC and the Water Quality Board, we may not be able to do the analysis for you, but just getting those requests shows us the interest in this work, that we can make a case in the future for hopefully opportunities to provide those analytics. You know, when we first did the poll in 2015, it was it had never been done before, and so every time we do it, we're proving its value. So if you found the information today valuable and you wanted to know more, especially an analytics type question of like, oh, what does this look like for this lake, or why is it like that? Why are these responses coming through? We'd love to hear your comments, your feedback, or your question over email, because then we can bundle all those together and say, look at the public's, you know, their value of this poll. They value it a lot and they want to know more. So.
Well, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. If anybody has any lingering thoughts? All right. Well, thank you so much to the Water Quality
Philip?
Board. Yeah, Matt.
Can I do it? I do have one more if we have a minute.
You sure can.
Maybe
You have
kind
time.
of a wrap up here. This was really fascinating. Thank you all for presenting this. As I think has been said, wow, that's a whole lot of data. That's you know, we could spend days looking at each slide and teasing out some of the details, and then, like you said, what does it mean? For me, the Islander response, that question, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I was surprised in some ways that, or I was not surprised in some ways that Islanders felt more strongly than mainlanders, and then in others I was surprised that it was less than the mainland response. So I think there is value in digging a little further, and that's something we're interested in doing. And so my question for you is, how can GLIA continue to help? You know, part of our mission is to elevate the voices of Islanders. How can ideas that you may have for us to do that, and maybe directly to work with IJC, Water Quality Board, and others, you know, down the line, if you see any opportunities there? Thanks.
Well, firstly, I mean, I think you already did it by hosting this wonderful webinar and starting the conversation. If you're able to continue the conversation, and maybe it's writing a blog post or something for your newsletter to you know, more broadly share some of the results that we shared with you today. Beyond that, you know, I'll leave it for Antoinette and Allison to share more about opportunities to engage with the IJC and the Water Quality Board. But as a co-chair for the poll, be happy, you know, as we sort of listed for Antoinette's email, if you all think of questions, you know, that you would like to see on an online poll specific to Islander experiences or perceptions of the Great Lakes, we probably could integrate, you know, one or two questions definitely into the online poll. The phone poll is a little bit more rigid, but we'd love to explore what that could look like to make sure that the poll is asking questions that are of relevance and importance to Great Lakes residents. So that's a little bit of my thoughts, and I'll turn it back over to the staff for their thoughts.
Yeah, I will note that we mentioned a couple times one of the International Joint Commission big responsibilities is assessing the government's progress towards achieving the objectives of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, and the Water Quality Board is our key advisor in that. But we conduct public engagement opportunities to listen to public perspectives in a more qualitative way through listening sessions. We've done webinars, meetings, right? Rather than, in addition to these sort of quantitative snapshot poll insights. And so hearing public views, concerns, perceptions of government progress, what's what's working well, what could be working better. I'm sure that list is long. That is a key function of the International Joint Commission and what we do and how we consider and formulate and then provide advice to the Canadian US governments on steps they can take to continue to improve on the progress they're making. So later in 2025, we'll be providing information about opportunities to provide written or video comments, webinars, events, those sorts of things. And so having Islanders participate in those platforms and voice your concerns on those venues is an important way that you can contribute to our important responsibility of doing that progress assessment.
Awesome. Well, seeing that we're at the top of the hour, I want to say thank you again to our three folks, Allison, Kelsey, and Antoinette, for sharing this information with us. It's been super fascinating. It's given me a lot to think about. Feel free to reach out to me if you have additional thoughts. Like I mentioned, this is going to be on YouTube in the next couple of days. And it looks like Antoinette also shared her email in the chat. So if you have questions for their team, feel free to reach out to her. And thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really impressive.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.